Hello everyone and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Adz Lyson, and I am the Grumpy Surfer. Before we start the podcast today, I have got a little link for you to go to. So if you want to get hold of any of the OMBE stuff that we talk about today or that I've talked about previously in the podcasts, go to www.ombe.co/? via equals Grumpy Surfer podcast, and that'll take you directly to the OMBE page and potentially get you 10% discount off your purchase from there. OMBE are absolutely amazing. I've been using them for over a year now and my surfing has come on tenfold, and I really mean that. I'm not just saying that because I've been given a link by these guys. It really has, and I wouldn't say that and I wouldn't put it on the podcast otherwise. So today's podcast is a guy who was formerly on the English surf team. He then got into surf coaching and beach lifeguarding and now runs his own performance surf coaching program, which he's now part of the team, bringing on the young guys on the English surf team. So please enjoy my conversation with Beau Bromham. Beau Bromham, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Adz. Pleasure to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
3 questions. How are you? Where are you? And are you getting in the water to surf today?
I am good. Thanks, Adz. I'm at home and I will not be getting in the water today. It is northwesterlies, 0 options available.
Did you manage to get in the water yesterday? I saw you did a little bit of coaching with some of the guys yesterday as well.
Yeah. I think that was the first that's the first day on the beach at Croyd that there's been for almost a month. So we were down there. I got in at first light myself with a few of the juniors and then did a session near a high tide. It was really good.
Yeah, I managed to I call it a strike mission. It's not really a strike mission when it's a 6-hour drive, but we managed to go to a cliffy place the other side of the estuary, and there was no one there. It was we got in about, I think it was around about 11ish.
Yep.
No wind, super glassy for about an hour and a half until that northwesterly wind kicked in. And then it just ruined everything. But yeah, there's 3 of us out on one peak, and mate, it was my first surf of the new year, so I was quite stoked with that, to be honest.
Perfect way to start. Yeah, that sounds epic.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about your background and kind of what you do. So at the moment, you are a surfing performance coach. You're part of the I keep saying British coaching team for British surfing, but it's not British surfing anymore, is it? It's English.
Yeah, it's
Surfing.
English surfing. Yeah.
Yeah. So and you've got your own performance coaching company called Beau Performance. Let's go straight back to the start, super early. Where did you grow up? How did you get into surfing and coaching and all that palaver?
Yeah. So I grew up in Kent until I was about 12 years old. And then we moved, we visited mainly Cornwall actually on family holidays, and sort of how things were transpiring in Kent. I've got great friends still in Kent, but my name was Beau and I had long curly ginger hair, so I was quite an easy target for, I would say not anything severe, but some bullying when I was younger. And I look back now and I think that's probably just at that young age. It's probably 11 years old. It was just lack of kind of an identity. I think it is at that young age that makes you probably more insecure than you should be, and you take things really badly. So there was a lot of trouble there, and I would get kind of deal with it in the wrong way, in getting angry about it. So we thought as a family it was a really good move to kind of get out of Kent and come down by the sea. And we ended up in Croyd.
That's a big move though, right? Because you're going from, Kent's, forgive my geography, is in London.
Yeah.
And to go from sort of like, a main city living to go and live by a sleepy little village by the sea, it's quite a big culture change as well, really.
Yeah, huge. It was really big. I think easier for me and my sister. A really difficult move for my mum and dad to just try and find work down there. And so we just kind of we moved to Croyd. We came down for the sea. So it was like, well, let's get as close as we can. So we rented a place in Croyd for I can't remember how many years, but it must have been about 5 years. We were in Croyd. Then we moved to just up to Georgia. So we really
Even
into
quieter.
yeah, exactly. I remember crying when we moved to Georgia because I thought, how am I going to get to the beach now? But we fixed up a bike. I actually got a moped by the time we moved, so I just sat on the board and it was easy. So yeah, that's when I moved to we moved here to Devon, and that's when I started surfing. I didn't surf before that, so 12 years old. Moving to Croyd was probably what helped the most because getting the school bus, everyone surfed, and I had one friend in particular who was pestering me every day to come surfing. And I did want to, but at that time I was still really into football, and that's what I liked doing most of the time. And then one day I just gave in and I said, let's go. He gave me a board and a wetsuit, and he was so much better than me. And immediately that made me think, right, I want to get better than you.
Well, 12 years old's quite a late starter, isn't it? A lot of the guys
Yeah,
that, live locally in Croyd and you see the guys, that are super high performance guys now through social media and, you see the Grom search and all that sort of thing, and they're really high performance kids and they've been surfing. They've been in the water since they're 3 years old or something.
yeah, yeah. You see that so much, don't you? Like the 9-year-olds that are just charging and doing massive air reverses. It's, yeah, kind of early specialization sport now.
Did your mate give you like a stereotypical, like, early 90s thruster that was like 6'0" and it was like nearly 18 inches wide, super thin as well?
That's exactly it. Luckily, he was a lot taller than me, but I think it would have still been about 5'5". um, I did quickly get my own board though. I got my first board was a Bic. It was a Bic, maybe 6 foot. It was pretty perfect actually. It was buoyant enough.
Yeah, I mean, back in those days, though, I could imagine, pop outs and stuff were kind of really in their infancy, weren't they? Really,
Yeah,
I can't imagine. It would have been a really nice board to kind of learn on, but I guess you and I know kind of the same thing now, where learning on something that short, it's not kind of like the best option to go with either.
no, definitely not. Uh, I did. My dad had a longboard, uh, and I did try that, but because I think I started with my friend, I had that ego. I want to surf that short board. I'm not going on a big board, and that Bic was kind of the in between for me. It gave me enough float. But yeah, like you say, probably not ideal. A bigger board would have been better.
It's not exactly you can stick your dad's longboard on the back of a moped and go down the beach,
Yeah.
can you? You'd be taking people out left, right, and centre.
I never did work out whether it's legal to sit on your board on a moped. I don't think it is.
I don't really understand. I haven't really looked into the rules because I haven't really got a motorbike license, but I don't know what the rules are for having one of those little surf racks, the little U-shaped things that people back on that put on the side of bikes, like you see in Bali quite a lot. I don't know whether
Yeah.
you can put those on the side of things because people around here, guys go down and kite surf an SUP down in just down in Exmouth.
Yeah.
And I've seen a few guys put them onto like pedal bikes and cycle down the cycle path down there. But yeah, I don't really know what the ruling is behind that. I've got another friend actually who lives sort of like down Bantham way, like on the south coast, and he's got like a little scramble bike, and he's done a similar thing, but he puts like a massive SUP on it and drives around on that. But I don't really know what the
No way.
rules are on it.
No, I don't think I've never heard anyone been stopped. I was never stopped, so must be all right.
It's kind of a culture thing, though, isn't it? Especially sort of like
Yeah.
if you're living in North Devon, it's not like you're going to go down the M5 on
Yeah.
with it on the side doing like 60 because you're just going to take everybody out.
Yeah. It'll probably blow over.
Oh yeah, do you know what? I remember zooming around Bali and Java on scooters, but I don't think you really went over like 20 miles an hour, so it was kind of all right. I
Yeah.
think if you tried to do it here, you'd have to put like a counterweight or something on the side or a spoiler out the back.
There's a business here, ads. We'll
Oh,
make one.
mate, ideas flying everywhere, right? So growing up in Croydon and learning to surf sort of like a latter end of the age group as a kid. How long did it take you to kind of, really start to get into surfing? And because you were sponsored before you were 17, weren't you? And you got onto the, was it the British team then you got onto, or was it the English team still?
Yeah, back then, before all the politics,
Yeah,
it
2009,
was
2010, that wasn't it?
yeah. So that yeah, it's exactly then. That's 2009, 2010 is when I got onto the British team to
So
go to the Worlds.
yeah, when did that hook get in there and you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this?
So I would say it was instant ads. As soon as I did go for that first surf with my friend, it I just wanted to do that every day. From that point, I wanted to surf every day, and I still wanted to do football, but I was doing both, which I think was a good thing. I was doing both just as much as each other, but then I started wanting to miss football training or football matches to go surfing, and I'd say it was probably between 6 months to a year, probably 6 months when I did my first Croyd Surf Club contest. That was another friend who signed me up without me knowing. Actually, I turned up on the day just to go check it out, and I remember I got to the contest site, and my friend saying I had about 20 minutes to go get my wetsuit on, and I was paddling out, and so I did that, and that from that moment from Croyd Surf Club comp, I was really hooked to them because I got beaten so badly. I don't think I even made it out back, but
Yeah,
that's when I knew.
it's doing your first contest is can be quite a daunting situation, and especially sort of like, the conditions in this country aren't always really the best for competitions. I mean, especially back then as well. You didn't really have a swell window, did you? You just went out on the day that was, booked for that comp, and you just surfed whatever good waves or super shit waves, which is, generally the consensus for it, and you just tried to do your best.
Exactly. That's why it's so hard. So Croydon Surf Club is renowned to have huge and onshore conditions. Uh, and that's why I think QS is the same kind of all around Europe. It's can be really demotivating because you turn up to more contests that are bad waves than you do good waves without a window. So that's probably why I stopped competing eventually is all the traveling around to surf terrible waves got
Well,
demotivating.
I mean, it's kind of one of the later things I was going to talk to you about, but I mean, what's your thoughts on it? Do you reckon there's going to be a British surfer on the CT anytime soon, or at least I know there's a couple of guys from Wales that are on the what do you call it, the thingy tour,
Challenger series.
Challenger series. That's the one.
Yeah.
But you know, with the conditions in this country, it's kind of difficult to get good because you don't have that consistency. You know, you've got guys in America that surf in Hawaii, and I know Hawaii's quite seasonal, and especially, you know, talking to guys over on the west coast of America as well. The swell window is very seasonal as well, but there's a lot of consistency there. You know, a lot of good waves, a lot of good breaks, and you know, unless you go down the off the beaten track in this country, which again, like you said before, is very time consuming. You just surfing beach breaks, and you know, with somebody like you as a performance coach, you don't really have the time to go off the beaten track sometimes with, you know, a group of people to teach them, to coach them, to surf those good waves. So I think it would be quite difficult for a British surfer, you know, putting the whole of the UK into the equation to really hit that, you know, super high level. I think. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that definitely there will be a British surfer on the CT really soon. I think maybe even a handful. I really like. Maybe that's the wrong word. I'm really encouraging of the fact that anyone from the UK who is training to be a professional surfer could make it. Anyone from anywhere. We've definitely got some really strong talent at the moment. And in terms of the preparation in the conditions we get here, I think you just got to be really strategic about your year. So I think it's a great training ground and probably suits the QS style. So we stand a really good chance of qualifying to get on that Challenger series. And I think as long as you're strategic and plan, you have to work on your weaknesses. So we know that the types of conditions we get, and then you know the types of conditions you've got to get good in. So as long as you have that structure and you make sure you go and spend a month training in these types of waves or in that country, then, and I think British surfing is doing a really good job now at putting some camps on in good waves with really good talent from Britain. So I think as long as you do that, we stand a really good chance of having UK surfers on the CT soon.
I went on a surf trip to Ventura a few years back, and there was a guy there at the kind of, he was the guide at the surf lodge house that we were staying in, and I think, well, I know, and people that listen to this podcast know that I'm quite picky with when I go surfing. You know, I don't live on the beach. I kind of do. I live like 5 minutes from the beach here in Exmouth, but it doesn't really pick that many good waves up. So it takes me about an hour and 20 to get to, you know, the south coast or the north coast. But I generally only really go when I know certain places the conditions are going to be good. You know, I'm 40 now. I've got family and responsibilities and blah 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 blah, all that crap. So, you know, you could argue that I'm being quite picky, but I'm also, I think, in my head, I've surfed since I was like 14. So I've I was just kind of sick of surfing really shit waves, you know, rocking up when it's like really mushy and, you know, it this is gonna sound, hey, Grumpy Surfer podcast, right? I was just like really sick of it, and it just demotivated me to do it. So now, you know, like yesterday, for instance, and it was going to kind of be good, and we went down. It was just no one was there. I was like, this is fucking amazing, you know. But I think if you're going into that competition scene and going back to kind of my point with this guy in Fort Ventura, he basically said, because the waves weren't that good when we went there, he said, as long as there's a face that you can do one turn on, you know, you can practice. And
Definitely.
I kind of took away from that a little bit, but it still didn't stop me being miserable git when it came to going. Like, you know,
There's a balance. I think if you're saying in your situation, my situation, our goals are different than those who really want to pursue that career as a professional sport. And so we've got to strike that balance of, keeping that enjoyment level up, and to keep motivated. If we keep going in when it's terrible and having terrible surfs, then you might have 6 or 7 of those surfs in a row, and on the 8th day it's good and you just can't be bothered.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. We've digressed a little bit from your story. So when did you start becoming a beach lifeguard and getting into surf coaching?
So beach lifeguarding happened. I'll actually go back a bit. So finished school. I went to college, and I didn't quite finish college because that was I can't remember the year off the top of my head, but when I was about 16 years old, that's exactly the year when I first qualified for the British team to go to the Worlds, and that World Games was in New Zealand. And I ended up missing a big chunk of college work at that point. And then when I came back from the Worlds, I was super motivated. I wanted to train as much as I could and smash the competitions that year. So I mentioned it a couple of times to Mum that I wanted to quit college. And after the Worlds, I thought getting selected for the Worlds was a big goal of mine, and I did that. And when I came back, I thought, right, I took this almost like a business plan to my mum. I said, Mum, I'm quitting college. This is why, and I'll go back and study when I'm ready. At that time, I didn't really know why I was at college. I think that's the same for probably a lot. You just go through that system and you don't kind of have that end goal, what you're going to do after. So I said, I just want to fully focus on training and surfing and just see how far I can go with it, and I'll go back and study. So I did that, and in order to fund my training and travel, I started working at the surf school. I worked at the surf school for about 4 or 5 years, 17, 18, 19, 20. So yeah, to about 21. And then I started lifeguarding. Just that, needed that change, that extra responsibility in a job, so it wasn't stagnant. And that was so good. Still, we always joke about it, lifeguarding, but it's the best job I've ever had.
I've done over the years I've become a beach lifeguard, and I've done all my surfing coaching calls and stuff, but I've never actually invested or gone down to the beach and actually used it properly. It was generally just so you could get qualified for Surf GB or whatever it was, whatever the association was at the time that enabled you to get your certificate for your surf coaching calls. But I, in retrospect, I mean, I don't think I could have done that anyway, because I didn't live by the beach. So, it wouldn't have really worked. I mean, like you guys, for instance, you got Cotty, Ben as well,
Yeah,
we know each other, and you can do that because you live in that environment as well. But it was something that I would have liked to have done. I think it would have been interesting anyway, I think.
Yeah, for sure. You're right. It's having that convenience of being able to walk to work. And for the pay you get in the area, it's decent pay, especially for around here. Doing something that you are pretty passionate about, which is being on the beach. A big draw for me was that you could surf whilst you're not technically whilst you're working, but you get a little lunch break sort of thing, 40 minutes. If the person you work in rotation, so if the person behind you doesn't want to surf, which actually happened quite often, then you can take their 40 minutes as well. So you could end up and you do that at least twice in a day. So you could end up surfing for 2 hours, for 2.5 hours.
Oh, I want to go back 20 years.
Yeah. And it's funny because lifeguarding, you always had those, you get the classic kind of summer day, like last year where it was flat actually last year was a bit of a anomaly where it's flat for almost all summer, but you do get those flat weeks where people walk past the truck and you're laying on the top of the truck, kind of pinching yourself that you're getting paid to just sunbathe. Well, I wasn't. I'd prefer to be in the truck because I'm ginger and I get burnt they're easily. But people go, "Oh, cruisy job," and it is to an extent. But you could be laying there even on those flat days, and it happened a lot of times during the 6 years I think I was there, where it just completely catch you not off guard, but it's really easy to relax there on a quiet flat day, and then something really big happens, like a heart attack down the other end of the beach, and you have to switch from that relaxed mode to all of a sudden trying to remember everything. And so it was so cool. It was such a cool job.
There was a, I mean, I worked on the beach at Croydon with a couple of surf schools every now and again, doing a bit of moonlighting when I was in the military, and you can definitely take some stories away from that as well, can't you? I mean, it's really strange because I think there's this stereotype about lifeguarding. It's kind of like you've got these TV programs like Bondi Rescue and stuff, and everybody thinks it's kind of like, you know, quite glamorous, and you're going in the water and you're rescuing people. But I I was always really surprised how unaware people are of the ocean. And I've rescued a couple of people in the water, you know, during my time, and when, you know, when I was coaching down there, and I was just like that, like what are you doing?
Yeah,
It's crazy, and I think lifeguarding on those types of beaches as well, because the conditions can change super quickly as well. Subconsciously, this is going to sound quite deep. So subconsciously, you're kind of making your water awareness better as well, because you know you can see, right, there's a rip there, and then when the tide change, it's going to come out and it's going to whip out there, and you can see those sandbanks and the tides change and stuff like that, and you can kind of correlate that, you know, going back to the surfing conversation, when you're competing or you're coaching with you know, athletes that are in competitions, you can kind of see that change as the tides are changing, and the conditions are changing as well, which you know, I think helps you quite a lot, and it also gives you a lot more water awareness, as opposed to, like, you know, your SAS guys, the Saturday and Sunday guys that come down and they just go and jump in the water, and they go off like, you know, 5 years ago the sandbank here was good. So I think it kind of helps you out a little bit too, right?
so true. That's same for surf coaching in terms of that experience makes you a better coach, and lifeguarding definitely makes you so aware of what's happening on the beach. And it's probably more with the RNLI, they really like to try and keep the same team on the same beach, because a team that's worked the beach for a week can just turn up and know exactly where to put the flags, because they know at what stage of tide the rip's going to start working. But generally, even if you haven't been on that beach, you can spot those situations happening early enough from the experience you get from working on the beach.
What do you, going to a coaching perspective now? So, what do you find is the most common error with people that you coach and teach from, you know, guys that um, book you to do a coaching session from, you know, your intermediate level all the way up to kind of like your high level guys? What's the most common error in people's surfing, do you find?
I tell you what, I think I'm going to go with recently the most common one, is creating torque. So of your bottom turn, using your trailing arm to reach forward when you're going into that bottom turn, and then pivoting around that arm to create torque through your turn. That is one that has come up so many times. With that is definitely, in fact, not even recently, that is definitely the one that I end up working on with people most.
Over the over the last, well, I've been surfing now, what, 27 years. It's only the last 5 years I've come to realize that that trailing arm is pivotal in
Yeah,
pretty much everything. I used to surf, and I've got a couple of friends that have kind of, you know, we talk to each other and coach each other in the water sometimes. and pulling that rear arm forward. I used to surf like an albatross, one arm like up at the front and then the other one up at the back. So you kind of like in a crucifix position while you're surfing, and it really
Yeah,
unbalances you, and it shuts your hips off, doesn't it? When you come into to do like your rotations and your turns. And now I'm really kind of like Steph Gilmore-esque. I've got this hand super high up here, and do
yeah,
you know what? It's just that one thing, and turning my rear foot in a little bit as well, because I used to surf like Larry Bertelsmann with my feet sort of like splayed out either way, has has really changed everything.
wow.
And well, but it's just from a personal perspective anyway. But yeah, it's really strange that you say that.
Yeah, game changing. It is, like you say, you mentioned off balancing. That is a really good one when you stand up to demonstrate it just on the land how that arm works. And it's crazy how that feeling of falling back every time you try a turn and you don't understand why you're falling into layback. You're always falling backwards and that arm's going behind you. And you can have a really good bottom turn, you can be really compressed. And if you don't create torque with that trailing arm, you'll always end up in that fight in that layback position and falling off. So yeah, it's game changing, that technique.
I had a little read through your website, and I thought there was one thing in there that stood out for me the most, and it's probably not hot. It's not a criticism at all, but it was one of the things that I thought, do you know what, this is super important. So you've got in there, you've got 5 factors of performance, right? The first one you've got is physical preparation, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit. 2, technique standard, wave usage, then your tactics, which I assume is kind of like associated to competition. And
Yeah,
then you've got psychological preparation. And I think all of those things combined as well, regardless of whether you're a competitor or you're just a recreational surfer, really, really comes into play, really. And you don't see a lot of coaches kind of using sort of principles or factors and stuff to kind of put forward a little bit. It's all very much kind of like, well, do this, do that. But if you've kind of got a set format that you can carry, right, the first thing you need to get really good at is your physical preparation, which is, nutrition, your fitness, your flexibility, all
yeah,
those sort of things that make your body wellness is very important. I mean, you would have seen it yourself down on the beach coaching as well. You get people come down, and this is not meant to be derogatory or anything like that, but you get like the dads and the moms that come down that want to surf with the kids, and you're trying to teach them to pop up, but they can't pop up because they're not physically able to lift their body weight up, or they can't do a squat thrust and turn their hips, so they get that low surfing stance on a board. Um, and that all comes with flexibility as well. So if you haven't got that, full body prep, and you've not been training to do something, it can be very difficult to crack those other, 4 principles that you've got down there. When the first one is, it is very key, and I think that's why probably people struggle the most when they haven't been in the water. Like I hadn't been in the water since the beginning of December. I went back and had a look at my watch the other day. So yesterday was the first time I've been in the water for about 6 weeks. But I was like, I like to keep in shape. I'm a jiu-jitsu coach and do all these things. So when I go down there, I can just put my board in the water, whack my suit on, and boom, I'm good to go. I might surf
yeah,
like a bit of an idiot for about 5-10 minutes just to get my feet in the wax, but
yeah,
it's all very key. And those 5 things that you've got there, I think, are key to anything.
yeah. Thanks, Ads. That they definitely help to give structure. They help from a coaching perspective to be able to identify what someone needs to work on. Like you said, the physical aspect of it, it's not hugely researched surfing, but it's getting better. And there are some really good research and some papers out there that, like the pop up, for example, you've got to be able in the pop up movement, you it requires you to move 75% of your body weight. You've got to be able to push 75% of your body weight. And that's the difference between having a really nice, quick, fast pop up. It's not to say that someone can't get to their feet, but it's just the difference between, yeah, that nice explosive movement straight to your feet, or a little stumble, use your knee, or you have to use that Aussie pop up, back foot, front foot to help you get there. So that's one I really like to work on. It's a good test. Can you bench press 75% of your body weight, and then how many times do you pop up in a surf? Maybe how many times do you catch waves? Like between 5 or 20, or if you're one of the juniors, then maybe 100. and can you do that in the gym? Is a really good start.
What do you focus on nutrition as well a little bit with your clients? Because you know, we both come from a kind of a PT background as well, and I know that the energy that I put into my body has to equate to the energy levels that that I'm exerting. So if I'm just eating rubbish food like crisps and burgers and stuff like that, it's not really good nutrition to go into it. And I could imagine trying to educate groms in particular, live off energy drinks and Pringles, can be quite difficult to say, do you know what? Ditch that, drink water, eat your vegetables, eat your proteins, and you're going to get more physically stronger, and you're going to feel better and last longer in the water because you're doing this.
Yeah, definitely. It is hard. It's hard with the juniors, but I don't, I do give just advice. I don't go into too much detail with it just because I don't feel overly qualified, but I feel qualified enough to distinguish between kind of good foods, bad foods, and what's going to help with feeling like you've got energy and sustaining that energy. Once I did one of the camps, the English squad camps, I went into Tesco's or Lidl, I can't remember, and picked up a bag of shopping and took it to the camp, and we had a gym session. And I think it was at the end of the gym session, I said we're going to do a bit about nutrition. I got out all these different foods, and like your brown pasta, just normal pasta, and white bread, brown bread, and those sorts of things, proteins. And I asked them to plan a meal for their contest day, and then plan a meal for like different bits like sustained energy and those sorts of things. It kind of went down. It did go down well. They guessed almost all of it right, which was encouraging, that everyone does have a good idea. And yes, I've done that once. Every now and then I'll give a bit of advice, but I don't have any kind of nutrition plans that I'll give out or anything like that.
Excuse me. I'd like to talk a little bit sort of like sponsorship, and then talk a little bit about Surfing England as well. So with Surfing England, you're talking about nutrition and all these sort of things. From your perspective, from a coaching point of view, when you've gone to these camps with the guys, is there any sort of like a formal structure there where they're given this information as well? They've got coaches like yourself there. The other guys that are involved with Surfing England, is there anything in place structurally, like you would have, like, I don't know, with a stereotypical mainstream sport, like, I don't know, gymnastics, where you'd have these strength and conditioning coaches, nutritionists? Is there anything coming in line with that? Because I know, the guys on the teams are doing well at the moment, like you say, like in the ISA champs and other competitions. So do you see that? Is there funding coming in from the government to do this, to kind of put it on the map? Bearing in mind that surfing now is an Olympic sport as well.
Yeah, there is structure in terms of funding for surfing England, there isn't much yet. There has been a really good amount actually to support athletes. Been that's been just total breakthrough with that, being able to support athletes with their training. Kind of there was grants, not grants, but funding for backing the best, those sorts of things that were never there even a year ago. Or a year ago there was, but it's been doubled this year, which is great. On the squad, in terms of strength conditioning, there's strength conditioning coaches on board. We've got psychology coach, team manager, but they're all voluntary positions. So there's not funding to pay those people. So it's all done voluntary. And considering that it is done voluntary, there's a really good structure in place, but it's not to the extent, say, like gymnastics or something, where the athletes can train full time. We aim to do a training camp a month, so we get to see them once a month, and in that time you always want to focus more on surfing, so it leaves little time for the strength conditioning, although we're really working on a much more involved strength conditioning plan for them. And the psychology, we've done psychology sessions online for them, which have been really helpful. Quite a few of the squad members, they always have access to us, so they can get in touch through email and do private sessions if they want to talk more about an aspect of the coaching we went through. So the structure is really getting there. It's not gold standard yet, but it's good.
Do the guys that compete and you coach as well, do they get given game plans for different types of waves and different conditions and the competitors that they go up against, or is it just kind of case it's a very individualistic thing where they kind of surf to their strengths and to the judging criteria and in that way? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that. So we do. So in terms of competition tactics and competition training, most of our sessions will focus on heats. So we'll run heats, and at the moment, Surfing England are really trying. I think this year is going to be the first year that they've included priority, which has been the huge one for us, because when we go to the events like the World Games or the Euros, basically anywhere outside of the UK, every competition uses priority, and with priority comes lots of tactics that we're not used to or that we've experienced, but the whole squad isn't that used to yet. So in our training sessions, we'll run heats that kind of put the pressure on them. So we might limit a heat to 20 minutes. We might do 15 minutes, and just losing that 5 minutes it's crazy how small amount of time that feels. With priority, we try and do priority, and that at the moment involves us maybe wearing coloured rash vests, and then every time someone catches wave and the priority changes, we change positions. But we do a lot. We do a lot to try and get them just prepared to know what to expect when we go to competition.
What do you think about the whole aspect of video analysis when you're coaching? Because I know, when I've been down the beach and stuff, every now and again, I see you on the side in your dry robe and all your warmers kit on, taking photos and pictures of the guys. How much do you feel that plays in a key role with people when you're coaching and you're analyzing them as well?
I was actually thinking about this morning. I wondered if we'd talk about that, because there's times where I just feel like I'm a cameraman doing just filming to get clips, which isn't a bad thing. Obviously, it's sick if you get a good clip, but I do think when I started, you don't need a camera to do good coaching, but the rate of progression is sped up massively if the people you're coaching can see what they're doing. So for example, like we were speaking about that trailing arm, if I said to you, Adz, about changing the position of that arm, it's a skill to be able to apply feedback. So you would go out and maybe you would nail it straight away, but if you could see it, if I was to show you and then really quickly you could paddle back out and you've seen what your arm looked like, then you can put that into to practice straight away, and that really does speed up that progression rate of learning.
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because unless you've got a friend that's willing just to sit on the beach, or your wife or your missus and stuff to film you in the water, it is quite difficult. And I've said this a few times before. You know, the worst thing in the world is to have a photo taken of you or a bit of video footage taken of you, and you look like an absolute, well, in your mind's eye, you know, it looks rubbish, because everyone wants, especially in a stylistic kind of pastime and sport like surfing, everyone wants to look like your Kelly Slaters, your Mikey February's, your Devon Howards. They want to look like they're stylish, and when they're performing maneuvers they think are amazing, and they go back and, you know what, you didn't even hit the rail on that, you're surfing flat, and you've got a massive poo stance knocking out the back. So but like you say, it is quite important. And I'm I'm a bit of an advocate. I know, forgive me for this, but I'm an advocate of the guys at OMBE, because I've learned a lot from them, from their videos and stuff that they put out, and their products there. And that's kind of where I was talking about, that back arm. I watched a little bit of video footage, and a lot of my photos and over the sort of like 10, 15 years, and the GoPro footage, which I fucking hate, but it's there.
Yeah.
When I went surfing in the Maldives, a lot of the waves that I caught I thought were really good, but then I've got this little pterodactyl wing sticking out the back, and I'm like, oh my God, that just looks shocking. But when you start pulling all those bits together, and you start working on going down to the beach or wherever you surf, you have kind of like a little bit of a game plan. This time I'm going to turn this foot in a little bit, or I'm going to use this arm, I'm going to carry it a bit higher and push it forward and back to generate speed and drive and pivot on. Is quite important. And if you can see that's brilliant. But like I say, not everybody's got that aid to be able to video them. I think there was like there was a thing that cost about $1,000 that was like a tripod, and you wore a GPS. And do you remember, you stick it in the sand dunes, and it used to follow you?
Yeah.
I thought it was a good idea, but then I was like, well, if somebody knows what that is, you could just rob it, because no one's protecting it.
You wouldn't see their face either. You'd just be getting smaller and smaller as they run off.
Exactly. Yeah. Your GPS from a car, and it's just following you as you're driving around. How important do you think board design is for competition at the moment? Because there is that stigma of your standard shortboards. Obviously, the tail shapes and stuff do change, but I use the example of John Florence had a picture from Pizel put up on Instagram of his quiver, and they're all pretty much the same sort of shapes, but whether they've got a square tail or a pintail for different sizes and different types of waves. But I think it was a year ago or maybe a couple of years ago, Slater just pulled out his Omni, or was it a Cymatic or something, and was surfing Sunset on it, and everyone was like, oh my God, this is like, it's Tom Curran-esque, because he's surfing something that isn't stereotypical of what a pro surfer surfs on. What are your thoughts on the board design for competition these days?
That was Slater at Haleiwa, wasn't it? On a Cymatic, I think it was. It was massive, and he was on like 5'3" or something, and making it look so playful. I think so. I've always worked with shapers that I give them my weight, my height, and so when I was sponsored by Billabong for maybe 4 years, and so at that time Rob Vaughan was shaping for Billabong, so he was out of France, and I would just, yeah, give him my height, my weight, the kind of what I wanted the board to do, and then I would get some boards. And I regret not having a better relationship with a shaper so that I could go in, even watch them shape and ask questions about what made that board do that. I think over the last, so since I've not been competing 3 years, I've really experimented with a lot of different boards, and some amazing, some not as good. Slowly sort of starting to understand more than I did. I think for me, the biggest thing is being able to try so many different ones. You have your standard sort of high performance squash, which is going to be that little bit more release, bit through turns, so a bit more innovative maneuvers, high performance surfing. So if you don't have that kind of, if you're not fortunate enough to have work with a shaper where you can try loads of different boards, then you can just kind of stick to those parameters, and you need a little bit more hold if the waves are bigger, and go for that round tail, and there you're kind of, that's your starting point. And then I think it's about being really honest with those shapers that you work with, and tell, it's being able to articulate how the board felt, and what you how what you need. I don't think this is coming across very well, but I think little differences will make a huge difference in competition. So I know even if you change the fins on a board, it will feel like a completely new board, a different board. So you really need to, my goal would be to have FCS and Futures test center with me in the van, so that the juniors were able to go in for 20 minutes and then get out, try a new set of fins, and then you can eliminate, either you thought your board didn't work, but you tried a different set of fins with more pivot, less pivot, and now the board's alive, and so okay, this is a great board with these fins. Or it just doesn't work with any fins, then you can go to the shaper and say it's just not happening. Then you can work on a new, slightly different shape.
That's the thing with board shape and design, regardless of whether you're a pro surfer, high level surfer, or you just kind of, your basic intermediate guy that enjoys recreational surfing, is that, in fact, I had this conversation yesterday on the drive back home, because one of the guys had just bought there's a new fourth shape. It was a 6/8, 5-fin FCS2 setup. And I was just having a conversation with him about it. And, this guy, John, he's slowly building his quiver up. And I wasn't kind of criticizing at all, because I think, like we're saying, surfboard design, there's so much variety out of there. But also I think there's false variety as well, because, you've got John Florence who's surfing the Pizell Phantom. And I'm going to buy that board because, it looks good. But John, you don't surf like John. You're never going to surf like John Florence. Slater's surfing a sci-fi, or, what's he on at the moment? An FRK. Oh, brilliant. I'm going to buy one of them. Cost, 750, 800 quid. Yeah, let's do that with the fins as well, because you've got to get fins and all that stuff with it. But you're never going to surf like Slater. And I think it takes a long time to really kind of finite what you like to do, what you can do. And then, and that's without even, like you're talking about there, going into talking about fins. You're talking about the board shape. Well, actually, the fin shapes is just like board shapes, but it's a different kind of demograph, because it's like you're saying, it's the feel of the board in the water. It's how it holds, how you turn it. Do you like doing long carving turns, or do you want to try and do snaps? Because that's another set of fins, 2 separate sets of fins. Have you got a 20? I love twin fins. I whack some kill fins on them. Brilliant, because I just, I'm never going to be that guy that's going to be whipping the, trying to put the sun out with the water when smash the lip. Never going to be that guy. I'm going to try and hit the rail, and I'm just going to try and do nice, long, smooth turns and enjoy what I'm doing. And going from talking about this guy and what his board selection is to kind of me, I feel like I've gone a full circle. I started off surfing twin fins once I went to short boards, and I've gone a big circle. I've surfed quads, I've surfed tri-fins, 2+1s, bonzas, and now I've done a big full circle all the way back to twin fins, and now I'm comfortable with the quiver that I have. And I'm like, you know what? I just enjoy surfing what I'm doing, and I don't need to keep swapping my boards in and out, because I've got something now that I feel that suits me in those different conditions. Now, I don't know whether you could argue that I'm like in the small percentage of people that have been able to develop that, or whether you know we could have this conversation again in a 2 years time, and I could go back to buying another Cymatic, because that was probably one of the best boards I ever had.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's that little gerbil wheel that just keeps going around in circles.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good that you got really good kind of self reflection or awareness of what it is
That's an
that
age
you
thing.
really like. I think it just comes down to your, like, what makes you motivated for it. Do you want to catch more waves? That's the main thing to improve. If you want to catch more waves, then that FRK is maybe, and depending on your ability, maybe that design isn't going to help you improve, because it's going to really lower your wave count. Equally, if your sole motivation of surfing is to be able to surf that board, or to be able to do a snap or a critical turn, then I quite enjoy that, as long as you can pop up, it's not affecting those foundations, but you can then. So I lost my way a bit then, Adz, but as long as you're kind of happy, that's your motivation, then I enjoy working towards getting them to be able to do that, getting you to be able to do that on that board. And then eventually we might achieve that, and then you just want to kind of more relaxed, more flow, more waves, then we'll change boards.
Are you ever quite brutal with people when they turn up and they're booked in for a session, and they've got like, they're a low end intermediate, sort of like high end beginner, and they've bought like this, high end, high spec board, and you're like, that, why are you surfing that? I was going to fucking really swear there, but why are you surfing that? And if you do that, do you find it's a difficult conversation to have with people, because they have kind of forked out with that expense, and from your experience, you're kind of like, it's an awkward conversation to have, to go, Rob, do you know what, that 511 that you've got there is not really the board that you want. You really want to go a little bit high end, go sort of like 6'4", 6'6", a little bit more width and volume, so you can get that wave count in and practicing. Do you ever have those conversations?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's probably one of my, okay, this is my favorite thing about coaching, is the coach athlete relationship. An athlete doesn't have to be an athlete, it can be anyone that you work with. That coach athlete relationship is so important. So I'll never off the back be brutal until you know how that person takes feedback. And then that's a really fun process. For me, I'm definitely more I find it harder to be really straight, but equally, if that person, and I'll put this back to the surf school days, where you've got 30 different people coming in a day, and you're trying to teach them how to pop up and paddle for a wave. And everyone has a different personality and way of taking on board feedback, and you have to really adjust your coaching to allow that feedback to sink in. So if someone doesn't have the right, I don't feel have the right equipment straight away, I'll definitely build up that relationship first to understand how I'm going to tell them that board doesn't work. So it'd either be subtle no, I think you should try this. What boards have you got in your quiver? Maybe try this. Or if they're just a fan of that brutal feedback, and then I don't mind going, what the fuck is that? Why are we on that? And that's probably one of the things I enjoy most about coaching is that's the challenge, adapting so that your feedback is well received.
Yeah, I've tried to do it to a few friends before to say, like, you know, their size and weight, and it doesn't really correlate that well with what they're riding. But when you're and especially when I've gone on you know, on the Navy surf trips, you know, whether it's been a training camp or a sports tour, you know, in the Maldives or South Africa or somewhere like that, I think sometimes it's quite hard for people to take that feedback in as well, because people don't. It's kind of like, we call it a shit sandwich, right?
Yeah.
You need to give them a little bit of good feedback, so which is kind of like the bun or the bit of bread, and then the bit in the middle is like the shit bit. So you go, right, you know, this really isn't working for you. You know, you probably need to try this or this. And then you give them a little bit of positive feedback as well. It's just saying, mate, what are you surfing that for? You look like a right twat. No, this would work better for you.
Yeah.
But you know, when I've done it in previously, it's kind of like I feel a little bit awkward afterwards, but because I'm trying to be honest and trying to help them as well. But you also get that proper shit eye off people where they're just looking at you like that, going, why are you talking to me about this? I'm just trying to help
Yeah.
you. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I actually refrain from, unless I never really notice, even though with all best intentions, you might spot something that would be really helpful for someone. And I, even if it's friends, I wouldn't, unless someone asks for that feedback, I really refrain from doing it, because you know it just doesn't. And if they ask for it, then they're in a mindset that they're going to take on board your feedback. It's so hard for it not to be perceived as like a dig at their surfing or something, you know.
Yeah, no, do you know what? I've never really kind of looked at it like that. I always thought that, I know, this has just come to my head as well, because I've been to gyms before, and you know, not wearing my, you know, my PTI military uniform, and people are doing some absolutely shocking exercises, and I go up to them and say, mate, you might want to try this, and then you can just see them looking at you like that, going, you don't work here. And then I try to explain like my job, but I think, I don't know whether what it is that I just kind of it's the instructor in me that kind of just wants to try and help people. But like you're saying there, I've never really thought of the fact that maybe people don't want you to go up to them and actually tell them, you know, a bit of negativity that could potentially help them. I don't know. Probably the latter, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely. More often than not. More
Yeah.
often.
Let's talk jiu-jitsu. What got you
Yes.
into doing it?
My so our good friend Ben uh, really really helped me. So I think I wanted to do it anyway because when I went to university in Plymouth, I wasn't going to be surfing much. It was something my dad did, or sort of touched on. He didn't do it competitively or anything. He was a competitive wrestler though, for GB, but then he'd start showing me some techniques a few years before that. So when I moved to Plymouth, I thought, okay, this is the perfect opportunity to do jiu-jitsu. So I messaged Ben and said, does he know anywhere to train in Plymouth? And so he sent me in the direction of a really good place to train. And that was Checkmate with Ian Harrop. And that was really good. That experience there was like the surfing experience when I moved to Devon. I just straight away thought, this is epic. I like the flow of it and the learning something completely new again. And the flipping hell, the the physical demands of jiu-jitsu after a round is crazy.
Oh
I've
yeah,
never felt
I, I
so fit.
I had a guy turn up a couple of weeks ago, Polish guy, and he was talking to me at the start, you know, bit of coach student interrelationship sort of stuff, and he started saying to me, you know, so when are we going to start doing like these submissions and these chokes and stuff? And I was like, mate, just get on the mat, have a little go of what we're doing, you know, and we'll talk after. And we did a bit of sparring at the very end. He's like, I didn't realize it was going to be this hard. And I was like, well, yeah, you know, one person's trying to stop you doing something can dominate you, and you're trying to do the same thing to them. So there's a little bit of like, you know, resilience there as well. And yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why I started doing it, was because it was like a really addictive thing, and very similar to you. You know, I was in the gym all the time and wanted to do something different that didn't involve like doing a program or something, and I got kind of bored with it because I've been training for a long time. You know, with sort of like physical, you know, programs and stuff for various things. So you know, when I started doing it, there was so much variety. There was no right or wrong way of doing anything, and I just found it very, very adaptive to the different kinds of pastimes that I had. And yeah, it just hooked me in like surfing, to be honest.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's the coolest. From when I started surfing at 12, I've always like given any sport a go, but yeah, jiu-jitsu has been that one that's almost a close competitor with surfing. Although I haven't been for a long, probably 4 months actually. I went once maybe a month ago, but I just felt towards the end of the summer, just with work, I was really finding it hard to dedicate even just 2 hours, which is poor, and I really miss it. So I know I've got to get back down to Yama.
It's those blue belt blues, mate. That's what it is.
The amount of shit I got given about that.
You fell right into a stereotype there, haven't you?
I know. But I'm determined. I will not. I'm not quitting by any means. It's just it's just on that priority list for me, and getting that, just dedicating that time to go back, because I do love it. I've got to go. I can't just not go.
Mate, just to finish this off, we're going to do a bit of a quick fire round. So if you could surf one surfboard fin setup for the rest of your life, would it be thruster, twin fin, single fin, 2+1, finless, bonza? I don't think I've missed one out. Yeah, which one of those?
Twin fin, definitely.
Yes. First person to ever say that in 2 years.
No way.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Best person to share a lineup with?
My girlfriend, Lenka.
Worst person to share a lineup with?
My girlfriend, Lenka.
If you could surf one place or one break for the rest of your life, where would that be?
It's going to be Croydon. That's where I started surfing, and tell you what, still where I've had some of my best waves.
Beau Bromham, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks, Adz, for having me.
And that's it. If you like the podcast, please like, share, and subscribe on your podcast provider. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks.